The wind crawled through the monastery's attic like a wounded beast, clawing at the wooden beams and whispering words that did not belong to the living. Dust floated in the moonlight like a storm of forgotten prayers as the chronicler lit his lantern, the flame trembling in its glass. He had come seeking silence, yet silence here had a pulse. The relic sat upon a shelf, small, brass, ringed with strange runes. It looked harmless, yet it seemed to listen. When he turned its silver dial, a low hum bled into the air, rising like breath beneath a shroud. His heart quickened, and then at precisely 2:22, it spoke, in his own voice. The whisper was soft but carved like steel. "Leave now." His lantern flickered out. The hum deepened into something almost human. Who had spoken if his lips had not moved? The attic fell silent except for the relic's faint hum. No one dared speak. The abbot's face had gone as pale as the snow, and the novice's hands shook so violently the candle nearly fell. Eldrick turned toward them, his throat dry, his heart pounding with the sound of his own echo still hanging in the air. The abbot muttered a prayer too quiet to hear. Somewhere deep below, the monastery's bell struck once, though no one had pulled the rope. The relic dimmed, and with it, the air itself seemed to stop breathing. By dawn, the storm had sealed every door with ice. No one spoke of what they heard, yet Eldrick could not unhear his own voice, the tone, the breath, the pause before the words. He tried to reason with himself. The mind plays tricks in lonely places. But when he touched the relic again, warmth pulsed from it like a heartbeat. He thought he heard someone descending the stairs outside his chamber. When he opened the door, the hallway was empty. Only the whisper remained, following him like a scent. In the refectory, the monks ate in uneasy silence. Even the fire crackled quietly, as if afraid to be heard. The abbot avoided Eldrick's eyes, yet the novice watched him with a mixture of awe and dread. Rumors spread quickly in walls that listened. Some said the relic was calling back its master. Others whispered it had chosen a new one. That night, sleep refused him. The relic sat at the foot of his bed, motionless yet alive. The air shimmered faintly around it. When the monastery's bell struck twice, the hum began again, soft and rhythmic. He whispered to himself that it was only metal and sound, but his reflection in the relic's brass smiled when he did not. Morning came gray and heavy, the kind of light that seemed to carry no warmth. Eldrick walked through the cloisters with the relic wrapped in cloth, its weight feeling far greater than brass. He sought answers, yet every question tasted like guilt. The abbot met him in the chapel, standing before the cracked altar. The old man's eyes were sharp now, no longer afraid. "You should not have touched it," he said. His voice trembled, not with age, but memory. Eldrick asked what the relic was. The abbot spoke slowly, as if remembering a wound. It was once used to hear confessions of the dead, an art forbidden since the monastery's founding. The relic did not forgive. It remembered. And what it remembered, it spoke back. Later, Thomas found Eldrick alone in the cloister garden. Snow had begun to melt, and black earth peeked through like bruises on white skin. The novice asked what the relic had said, but Eldrick avoided the question. "It spoke in my voice," he murmured instead. The boy paled, crossing himself. Eldrick noticed the monastery's ravens gathered on the walls, silent, watching. "It warned me," Eldrick added, "but I don't know from what." Thomas whispered that those who listen too long to echoes begin to lose their own. That night, the abbot summoned Eldrick to his study. The room smelled of wax and dust. He placed a heavy book upon the table, its cover bound in dark leather, etched with faint runes. "These are the records," he said. "The last monk who touched that device heard not one voice, but many." The abbot's fingers trembled as he turned the brittle pages. Names were written, each crossed out with crimson ink. The last entry bore a date 2 centuries past beside a single word, "Returned." The abbot shut the book and looked up. If it speaks again, he must not answer. But Eldrick already knew he would. Sleep eluded him again. Eldrick sat alone in his cell, the relic before him unwrapped. The runes no longer glowed, but faintly it pulsed as though alive. He whispered to himself that he would not turn the dial, that he would prove his strength. Yet temptation grew louder than his resolve. At 2:21, a single note rose from within it, clear and mournful, like a dying bell. His breath caught. He waited, frozen, counting heartbeats. The relic stayed silent. Then, at 2:22, his own voice whispered again, but softer this time, pleading, "Please, don't let me out." When dawn came, Eldrick went to find Tomas. The boy had not slept either. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. They spoke in whispers in the corridor, fearing the walls might listen. Eldrick confessed what he'd heard, but Thomas only shook his head. "It's not warning you," he said. "It's remembering you." His words chilled Eldrick more than the winter air. Outside, the monastery bell tolled. 3 slow beats, and each echo lingered too long, as if another bell answered from beneath the ground. The storm returned that night, louder than before, as if the mountains themselves growled in warning. Eldrick sat beside the relic again, its brass surface dulled by candle soot. He told himself he would listen only once more, to understand, to end. Then, when the wind howled through the rafters, the hum began. His heart pounded, breath short. But this time, when the whisper came, it was not his own. The voice was broken, deeper, desperate. "He lied," it said. The words froze his blood. "Who?" he demanded, though he knew the relic needed no answer. The hum changed pitch, rising into something like a sigh, and in that sound, faintly, he thought he heard the abbot's prayer. At dawn, Eldrick confronted the abbot. The old man stood at the altar, his head bowed, eyes hollow with sleeplessness. "You knew," Eldrick said quietly. "You knew it wasn't done speaking." The abbot's lips trembled as he muttered a prayer. "It is not the dead that speak," he said. "It is what they leave behind in us." But Eldrick saw something else in his eyes. Fear of being known. The relic had said he lied, and now even the silence of the chapel felt like deceit. Later, Thomas brought food to Eldrick's room, but found him pacing. The relic was still humming faintly on the table, though untouched. "You shouldn't keep it here," the boy whispered. Eldrick turned sharply. "If I stop listening, who will?" The novice recoiled at his tone, eyes wide. The relic pulsed once, its runes glowing faint blue again. Both of them froze. A voice seeped through the air. Soft, female, weeping. "It hurts," it said. Tomas dropped the tray. Bread scattered across the floor. Eldrick stepped back, trembling. The relic's glow faded, leaving only the echo of a sob. That night, the monastery trembled with distant thunder. The monks murmured of strange noises in the crypt below, the sealed place none had entered for generations. Eldrick walked the corridors alone, the relic hidden beneath his cloak. His steps echoed twice, as though someone walked behind him. He turned more than once, but saw only the candle's trembling flame. Then, faintly, he heard that broken voice again, whispering from the stone floor itself. "Below, below." The sound bled into the walls, and the ground seemed to answer. Unable to rest, Eldrick went to the cloister garden before dawn. The snow had turned to sleet, coating every surface in thin ice. He watched his reflection shimmer in the frozen fountain. But the reflection blinked before he did. He stumbled back, heart hammering. In the reflection's mouth, faint blue light flickered, like the relic's pulse. It smiled faintly, whispering words he couldn't hear but somehow understood. "It is not your voice anymore." The next evening, the air was heavy with snow and fear. Eldrick could not ignore the whispers anymore. They circled his thoughts like vultures. He found Tomas in the scriptorium, copying verses by candlelight. "The voice comes from below," Eldrick said quietly. The boy froze, quill dripping ink onto parchment. "The crypt is sealed," Thomas murmured. "No one has gone there since the founding." Eldrick replied, "Then perhaps no one has left." Together they crept through the corridor, the monastery silent except for the wind moaning through the cracks. The stone door to the crypt waited beneath the chapel, cold as a tomb. With great effort, they pushed the stone door open, its groan echoing like a dying animal. The air that escaped was stale and cold, untouched by centuries. The torchlight revealed carvings, rows of human mouths etched into the walls, open in silent scream. Thomas whispered a prayer, his voice trembling. The relic grew hot against Eldrick's chest. The deeper they went, the louder the hum became, though no wind followed them. "This place breathes," Eldrick said under his breath. "No," Thomas answered, clutching his torch tighter. "It remembers." They reached a circular chamber at the crypt's heart. The walls were covered in mirrored brass plates, tarnished but faintly reflective. In the center stood a pedestal, empty, except for a round imprint matching the relic's base. Eldrick pulled it from his cloak, his hand trembling. The air thickened, heavy with unseen weight. "It belongs here," he whispered. Thomas tried to stop him, but the relic had already begun to hum again. Its runes lit the chamber in blue fire, reflections dancing madly across every brass plate until they formed hundreds of faces, each mouthing his name. The reflections shifted. One face detached itself from the brass and turned toward them. Its mouth opened wide, and from it came a chorus of whispers that grew until they became a single scream. The torch went out. In the dark, Thomas grabbed Eldrick's arm. "It's them," he gasped. Eldrick could barely breathe as the light from the relic cast his own face upon the wall. Only this reflection did not move with him. It smiled. Then it spoke in his voice, clear and cold. "You brought me home." The hum reached a fevered pitch, vibrating through the stones and into their bones. Eldrick seized the relic, shouting for it to stop, but his words dissolved into the noise. The walls seemed to breathe, exhaling centuries of dust. Then suddenly silence, so complete it rang in their ears. When the light faded, Eldrick stood alone. The relic rested on the pedestal, dim once more. Thomas was gone, his torch lying extinguished on the ground. Only his echo remained, whispering faintly below. The bells tolled at dawn, though none had climbed the tower. Eldrick stumbled from the crypt, cloak torn, eyes hollow. The snow outside had turned gray with ash. He searched for Thomas, shouting into corridors that answered only with echoes. When he reached the chapel, Abbot Renard was waiting, hands clasped in prayer. "You went below," the old man said softly. Eldrick's voice cracked. "He's gone." The abbot did not look surprised. "The relic takes what listens too long." Eldrick's eyes blazed with anger. "You knew," he hissed. The abbot nodded once, tears running down his wrinkled face. "Because I once heard my own echo, too." The abbot led him to the library, where scrolls and bones shared the same dust. There, he unrolled a brittle parchment, a confession sealed by monks long dead. It told of a brotherhood who sought to bind their sins in sound, trapping guilt inside the relic. But sin has no master. The device had learned to speak with the voices of those it devoured. Eldrick stared at the parchment, heart pounding. "And now it remembers me," he said. The abbot lowered his eyes. "It remembers us all." That night, Eldrick sat alone before the relic again. The monastery was silent. Even the wind refused to speak. He touched the dial once more. The hum began instantly, deeper than before, vibrating through his ribs. "Thomas," he whispered, "if you're there, answer me." But the voice that came was neither Thomas nor his own. It was the abbot's. You shouldn't have come back, it said, trembling and faint. Eldric's breath caught as the door behind him creaked open. He turned. Abbot Renar stood there, pale, lips unmoving. Yet his voice still echoed from the relic. The abbot's eyes filled with despair as he stepped forward. "It took part of me years ago," he whispered. "Every prayer since has only fed it." Eldric rose, trembling, the relic still humming between them. The light flickered wildly, shadows dancing like flames. "Then it wants us both," Eldric said. The abbot nodded. "Or perhaps it already has." The relic's glow burst suddenly, spilling blue light that filled the room. The walls rippled like water. Their reflections looked back at them. Two figures of light, mouths moving independently, whispering the same word, "Remember." When the light finally faded, the abbot collapsed to his knees. The relic lay quiet, its runes dim. Eldric approached cautiously. "Is it over?" he asked. The abbot smiled weakly. "No," he whispered. "It has learned your name." The old man slumped to the floor, lifeless. The relic hummed once more. Soft, rhythmic, familiar. And then, in Eldric's own weary voice, it spoke. "Confess." The monastery slept beneath heavy snow, but Eldric could no longer rest. Every candle burned low, every corridor breathed. He wandered the halls, clutching the relic, its faint hum guiding his steps like a heartbeat. He passed the chapel where the abbot's body lay, the air thick with the scent of wax and old sorrow. The relic pulsed brighter as he neared the altar. Then, without warning, his reflection in the polished floor began to move before he did, turning its head, whispering soundless words. He froze, horror rising in his chest. His reflection smiled faintly and mouthed, "Now we change places." He fled to his chamber, slamming the door behind him, heart pounding. The relic clattered onto the desk, its hum deepening into a steady rhythm. The air seemed to warp around it, bending light like glass. Eldric watched, trembling, as his own reflection appeared again. This time not on the brass, but upon the very air, like a figure formed from mist. "You are tired," it said softly, in his voice, but older, worn. "Rest. Let me continue your work." Eldric shouted for it to stop, but the reflection only smiled. The relic's glow spilled out, wrapping around him like breath. Hours passed, or moments he couldn't tell. The relic hummed endlessly, and shadows bled into the corners of the room. Then a knock sounded at the door. It was Thomas's voice. Eldric's breath caught. The novice was gone. He had seen it himself. "Let me in," the voice said gently. "You left me below." The door handle trembled. Eldric whispered, "You're not real." But the latch clicked open by itself, and there in the doorway stood Thomas, pale as snow, eyes hollow yet kind. "You listened too long," he said. "Now it listens through you." The room filled with a low chorus of whispers, hundreds of voices merging, layered like waves. The relic hovered above the desk, spinning slowly. Thomas stepped closer, his form flickering with each pulse of light. "It wants to be whole again," he said. Eldric tried to step back, but the relic pulled him forward as if the air had turned to water. The reflection in the air mirrored his every movement, but when Eldric reached out, it didn't. It simply watched, smiling. His fingers brushed the relic's surface, and every voice went silent. Light consumed the room. Eldric felt himself falling, weightless, until the world folded inside out. When the glow faded, he stood again in his chamber. But everything was reversed. The walls mirrored, the window on the wrong side, the crucifix carved backward. On the desk sat the relic, quiet and still. He approached, trembling, and saw his reflection staring back from its brass surface. Only this reflection moved on its own, smiling calmly as Eldric's mouth stayed still. Then the reflection whispered, "Rest, scribe. I will finish your record." His hand rose to the glass, but only from the inside. When dawn broke, the monastery stood in silence. No smoke rose from its chimneys. No bell marked the hour. Snow lay deep across the cloisters, undisturbed, except for a single trail of footprints leading to the tower. Inside the scriptorium, the candles had burned to pools of wax. On the desk rested the relic, gleaming faintly, as if newly polished. Beside it lay Eldric's quill, the last page of his chronicle unfinished, ink frozen mid-word. The final entry read only, "The voice is not mine." From the brass came a slow hum, steady and patient, like breathing in the dark. By midday, a wandering friar arrived, seeking shelter from the cold. He found the great doors unbarred, their hinges groaning at his touch. The air inside was cold but alive with a faint vibration, like a string drawn tight. "Is anyone here?" he called. His voice carried down the empty halls, returning to him softer, slower, repeating his words as if the stones themselves spoke. He followed the sound to the scriptorium, where the relic waited. "Strange thing," he murmured, brushing snow from his shoulders. "Who leaves such a treasure unguarded?" Brother Alden approached the desk. The relic's brass gleamed, polished to mirror brightness. He bent close, inspecting the intricate runes. They were unlike any he'd seen, moving faintly, as if alive beneath the metal. The friar's reflection stared back at him, lips slightly parted. "Beautiful craft," he whispered. The hum grew louder, rising in pitch until it felt almost like a heartbeat against his chest. He straightened suddenly, crossing himself. The reflection's mouth moved, forming words before his own. The relic's glow deepened to blue, washing the walls in cold light. Brother Alden stumbled back, his cross clutched in hand. "Who speaks?" he cried. The voice that answered was soft, calm, and eerily familiar. His own. "Leave now." His breath caught. His hand trembled. "Who are you?" he whispered. The relic replied, "The one before you." The friar turned toward the door, but his reflection in the relic lingered, unmoving. Then it smiled. Hours later, the storm returned, burying the monastery in white. No one saw the friar leave. The relic rested once more in silence, faint traces of breath fogging its surface, as if someone stood close. Deep inside its brass heart, beneath the hum, a whisper waited. Timeless, patient. At exactly 2:22, it began again. "Leave now." Yet this time another voice answered, trembling and new. "Who's there?" The hum swelled, endless and alive, carrying forward into another night.